this isn't, when you look at the title, you might think I'm talking about Olympic level or World Championship level or the elite of the sport. I'm not. This talk is about something that is incredibly important to anyone who is involved with horses, who keeps horses, who rides horses. Because you might think there's a little bit of a bandwagon going on at the moment. Everyone's talking about welfare. There are welfare issues in keeping horses, riding horses, and those are becoming more discussed in equestrian forums, but also in forums outside equestrian which we don't really have control over. So I get asked some questions sometimes, and these are 3 questions in particular that I find quite hard to answer. And I'd like you to just have a think about these questions, and then when we've gone through the presentation, think how you would explain these to a friend who knows you ride, knows you keep horses, but who isn't a horse person. Do horses enjoy being ridden and competed? Does being trained and competed compromise their welfare? And do they suffer pain and injury as a result of being ridden and or competed? So maybe just if you can have a think about those questions as we go through. So what do we mean by equine welfare? Everyone talks about welfare. Well, in the UK we have 3 different acts which really govern what is considered to be equine welfare and what has to be done to keep within the law. Now, okay, there's a picture missing there. I'm sure you can imagine a horse in the stable. If you can't imagine a picture of a horse in the stable, can you put your hand up? Because you're in the wrong hall. There's equine careers or something else down there. First of all, it defines some tenets about equine welfare, and duty of care is central to this. So we have to, as horse owners, provide a suitable environment for your horse. We have to provide them with a suitable diet. We have to allow them to be able to exhibit normal behaviour patterns. Of course, what those are is also perhaps open to debate. We have to allow them to either be housed singly, if that's in their best interests, or to be allowed to be with other animals. And the final one, to be protected from pain, suffering, injury and disease. These are all legal requirements in the UK if you keep a horse. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about it, if this is something that particularly interests you, Red Wings have produced a really excellent guide called Equine Welfare and the Law, and it makes really interesting reading. So, my next question is, do we always manage to meet these requirements for horses in competition? Or take it away from competition, even if we're just hacking, do we manage to always meet these requirements for our horses? I think I like to try and convince you that I have the right to stand up here and talk about equine welfare. And some of the, I've been involved in 5 or 6 Olympic Games, a number of World Equestrian Games. I've worked with Team GB for 25 years. As Amanda said in the introduction, I'm currently president of the National Equine Welfare Council and Sport Horse Welfare Foundation. Sport Horse Welfare Foundation was established about 3 years ago by a group of vets and scientists, internationally recognised, who are concerned about what is happening in horse sport and lack of progress in some areas, and the welfare concerns that we think could be addressed by having more information, better research, better education. I've also published a lot of scientific papers, and I'd say around half of these are related directly to equine health. I'd say the other half are actually also directly related to some aspect of performance. So I think I am qualified to comment on this. So Amanda mentioned this term SLO. Can you please, with just a show of hands, say, have you heard of SLO? Okay, and can you keep your hands up if you've heard of it? And if you understand what it is, can you keep your hands up? Okay, all right, hopefully I can explain what it is. So It stands for social license to operate. It is something that is being picked up and talked about a lot, and the question is why. This is a definition by the president of the FEI. In our industry, social license to operate is the term given to society's acceptance of the practice of equestrian sport and all its related activities. Now, we can extend this because it's not just about sport. Social license is about what society as a whole, the general public, not just equestrians, what they think about what we're doing. So if we go back 300 years, society thought it was fine to have bear baiting. We don't have bear baiting anymore because society as a whole decided that was inappropriate. At the moment, society as a whole doesn't mind us keeping and riding horses, doesn't mind us competing horses. But some parts of society are objecting to certain things. And in fact, even within equestrian, certain groups of people are objecting to certain things that are being done with horses. So, what happens with social license? Well, and why does public opinion matter? Well, we can start off with public pressure at the bottom. And this is easy to apply pressure these days with social media. We get pressure. The media picks up on this and says, that's a great story, we're going to run this story, because the media obviously wants engagement. We then get an MP, Member of Parliament, who thinks, there's an opportunity for me, jumps on the bandwagon. Next stage, we've got a government debate, and I think you can think about some of, if we talk about fox hunting, deer hunting, that sort of process. The next thing, we've got a change in the law, and the next thing, it's banned and we're not allowed to do it anymore. And this can happen quite quickly. And with equestrian, we might be at the stage where this is actually taking place and we're not really actually aware of it yet. Smoking was another example. Smoking in public places was another example of loss of social license. So here's an equestrian, inverted commas. Of course, we realise that equestrian in the Olympics, in modern pentathlon, has absolutely nothing to do with equestrian as we understand it, dressage, eventing and show jumping. But do you think the average person in the street realises that we don't have any involvement? We don't agree with this, we didn't support this, we didn't have any control over this. They say, yes, but it's horses in the Olympics. So what happened there was, the media picked up on this, in a way quite rightly, and now they're not going to have it after Paris. They're going to replace the jumping with an obstacle course. They've lost their social license, they realise that, they've made a change. These are some threats, I would say, to our equestrian social license to operate. Behaviour like this, top left, is inexcusable. This shows a total lack of respect, lack of awareness, lack of care. Other issues here, fractures in endurance, the Grand National, horse racing. So these things do impact on how the lay public, and also probably many of you have views on these sort of images as well. Anyone watching the Gothenburg Horse Show last weekend? This is just not acceptable. This is banned. Why is it happening? Who's allowing this to happen? Stewards are supposed to steward the warm-up area. Stewards are supposed to stop that sort of behaviour. Why don't they stop it? Because it's generally accepted that this happens. Even though there is regulations that this should not be happening, it's happening, and this is damaging our social license to operate. Hello. I made him fall over. Another example of loss of social license to operate. Jump racing was banned in South Australia with the backing from the Green Party. Again, MPs, a particular party, saw an opportunity, thought, great, we'll go for this, low-hanging fruit. They've got jump racing banned. So who's to say that couldn't happen elsewhere in the world? So, these are some questions that we've been asking people, quite large numbers of people, as you'll see in a minute. So, this is one question. Do you feel the welfare of sport horses is compromised? Let's just do number one, yes, often. Okay, yes, sometimes. Okay, no, almost never. Nobody brave enough. I think you're a very good audience. This is the results of nearly 3,500 equestrians right across the board. Yes, often about sort of 20%. Yes, sometimes sort of up around 60%. This isn't good. We are horse people. We are admitting that we compromise the welfare of our horses. At least you're all honest. Do you think equine activists have a point regarding welfare issues in horse sport? Yes, often. Yes, sometimes. No, never. There we go. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll be interested to get your point at the end then. No, never. There were two ladies at the back who said no, never. You can see again this one. Sometimes, but not always. The majority of people think equine activists have a point. The thing about equine activists, we can say they are misguided. The one thing generally is they're not misinformed. They're usually very clever people. They are incredibly persistent. They're not going to give up just because we say they're crazies. These people, we need to listen to what they're saying because sometimes they do have a point. How we deal with that is a different issue. And then finally, do you think horse sport's social license to operate is under threat at this point in time? I think you now understand what social license is, so I think you're now qualified to answer this question. So, yes, moderately, greatly under threat. Okay, maybe about a quarter, slightly. Okay, and who doesn't think we're under threat? Okay, very interesting. Are you waving at me or? Oh, you're just opening your coat, sorry. I thought you were voting. So this is what, again, our large sample said. Most people thought that our social license is moderately or greatly under threat at this time. And I think they're right. I think we are seeing an increase in reaction. The response to the Gothenburg roller was the greatest I've seen, I think, across so many platforms. There are people who say stop horse sport completely, stop riding horses completely. I think roller is such low-hanging fruit and so easy to deal with that equestrian, if we can't deal with roller, I don't think we're going to be riding horses in 20 years' time, sadly. These are, I think, some other threats to equestrian SLO. We have demonstrators. Again, these people are risking arrest. They are risking imprisonment, risking being fined. But do you know what? Stop horse abuse. Maybe they have a point in some cases. We've got the book by Julie Taylor. I've tried to engage with Julie and talk to her about her views because she's essentially attacking elite sport. And I've asked her, what about all the obese horses? What about all the horses suffering from laminitis? What about horses that are lame and where the owner isn't getting a vet in? What about gastric ulcers? I've asked her about welfare issues. She doesn't want to talk about that. All she wants to focus on is anyone who she considers elite, which is pretty much probably, I'd say anyone who owns a horse and rides it now is what she's targeting. And then look at this petition here. That was 19,000 people have signed a petition to ban horse racing in the UK. Do you know what? Based on some of the data, maybe they have a point. And who's heard of the Party for Animals? Are you from Holland? Okay, so this is a party in the Netherlands. They want to ban people not just from competing, but from owning horses. So they don't want anyone to be allowed to own or ride a horse. And they are increasing in their power and their support. That could happen here, could happen anywhere. So what is being done to protect horse welfare and equestrian SLO? Well, you may have heard that the FEI has set up an ethics and wellbeing commission chaired by Professor Natalie Warren, who is a very well-known and respected animal behaviourist based in New Zealand. It's a committee that obviously is within the FEI to some extent. There is also in the UK, they've just appointed Professor Madeline Campbell, who also sits on the FEI group as the chair of their ethics and equine welfare and ethics advisory group. So those are positive steps. It seems that though these are a bit late, these are things that have only just happened in the past year. One of the things that I've been involved in is, I mentioned earlier, 3 years ago, a group of us realised that we needed to do something to provide objective evidence to some of the welfare issues that are being raised. We go back to roll curve. There is actually very little scientific evidence about the effects of roll curve. So what this means is when we start discussing roll curve, it tends to become emotive and it comes to be opinion-led rather than factual. And when it's opinion, it's very easy to have people who are clever arguing to get out of it. If you're looking at data, it's much harder to argue with data. So we're trying to provide data. These are some of these people I'm sure you know. Professor Hilary Clayton, Dr Lars Ropsdorff, who's the FEI's surface expert, Professor Jane Williams from Hartbury. These are all people who have a high profile and who are prepared to stand up for welfare of horses. And when we say horse sport, really we're talking about at all levels, right from local unaffiliated up to international. And one of the things, this is our first project, we are trying to understand the views of people within the equestrian industry. What do they think about topics such as travelling? What do they think about competition stabling? What do they think about competing in hot weather? What do they how well do they think welfare is being managed? So we're asking them about their views, and then we're going to try and feed these views back into the industry to say, this is where you need to make more of an effort. So, has your response to those questions changed? Do you think horses enjoy being ridden and competed? Who thinks no? Who thinks yes? Who's not sure? Okay. And does being trained and competed compromise their welfare? I think sometimes it does. And I think we have to say they sometimes suffer pain and injury as a result of being ridden and competed. You know, we have good evidence for that already. So, we need a change in attitude within equestrian sport. We can't keep saying, we know what we're doing, we've done it already well, we're still doing it well, we don't need anyone else to interfere. We do need a change, and we're all going to be responsible for the future, not just of horse sport, but of owning horses and keeping horses as well. And just to finish, remember that this was once accepted as common practice, having children go down the mines. Thank you very much.
Absolutely fascinating. We're going to open the floor to questions now, so if there's anything you want to ask Dr David Marlin, please raise your hand and we will come over to you. Please don't be shy. I can see many of this audience that I know aren't shy, but we'll start down here, so over to you.
Thank you, David. It was a really interesting talk. I just wanted to understand what you thought about Sue Dyson's recent paper, where they looked at ridden behaviours indicating pain in horses, and whether we need to change what we're doing at grassroots level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure many of you are aware of Sue's work. Sue was at the Animal Health Trust at the same time as I was there. Sue has done some excellent work on pain-related behaviours. What I think is sometimes not realised is actually there's quite a lot of groups working on this, and I think combining that different research is probably going to be the way forward. We do need to look more at behaviours that horses are exhibiting in competition to because we can't put heart rate monitors, and we can't put skin conductivity sensors, and we can't cover horses in sensors every time they go out to compete. So of course their behaviour is an expression of how they are, and I think understanding and looking at behaviour is probably going to be one of our ways to improve in welfare.
It's great to be in your presence, listen to you speak. When you're looking at all the people who want to make a change to maintain our SLO, where do you think the divide lies between people that are doing it just to maintain their income, success, and how many of those people do you think are genuinely want to do it to maintain welfare?
That's a great question. I have another talk where I talk about people's motivation for doing things or not doing things, and compromise to welfare takes many different, I think, aspects. You have people who compromise their horses' welfare because of lack of money, people who compromise because of ignorance, people who compromise because of arrogance. Oh, that doesn't hurt, that sort of thing. Then you have intentional abuse, which is for either prestige or financial gain, and that's kind of, in a way, that's some of the worst stuff. You're not going to correct that with education. The only way you're going to correct that is with rules, legislation and enforcement. So I don't know, it may surprise you to know, let's talk about cruelty. Tendon firing. There is absolutely overwhelming evidence that tendon firing is painful and unnecessary, and actually should belong in the Middle Ages. It's never been really used in human medicine for 200-300 years. It is still practiced on horses in the UK. I get people send me pictures now and again of horses that have been fired. So there's education, but I think people have to be willing to be open and to sort of think that maybe we do need to change our attitude a little bit if we want to carry on keeping and riding horses. Otherwise, we're going to find it's just gone.
Really interesting topic of discussion there. We've still got time for a few more, so we'll go here, and then we've got time for those two as well, so I'll pass this to you.
Thank you for bringing such an important topic to an event like this. Am I right in saying that there are within all the animal welfare laws, there's nothing about rider competency, so there's nothing about how well a rider rides the horse?
That's a really good point. Whether you could approach that from the last one, which is pain, injury, if you said somebody didn't have their saddle fitted, was way too big for their horse, wasn't careful about how they rode, you could say that was causing the horse pain, and therefore that would be contrary to the Animal Welfare Act UK. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, we have to be pragmatic. I work a lot with various charities. I don't think the RSPCA wants to go around prosecuting riders who perhaps are a little bit unstable in the saddle. But if your horse has got a chronic back problem and you're unstable in the saddle and your saddle doesn't fit very well, somebody has got to say to you, has got to tell you this. And we have this problem with, I've come across this a lot with vets who have told owners their horses are overweight, are carrying too much fat. And one of the common responses is the owner picks up the phone to the practice and says, don't send that vet again, and if anyone else talks to me about my horse's weight, I'm going to another practice. So this is what I mean about attitude. It is very difficult, and in fact, Tamsin Furtado from Liverpool, we've got a group of us who are trying to think about how we're going to talk to horse owners about horse obesity and also appropriate weight, because it's a very emotive issue, and if we approach it the wrong way, we just get a brick wall, and that doesn't help the horse. So in some cases, direct challenge is good. In some cases, you need a different approach. So I think the question is, what is the compromise to welfare? Does it need to come under the Act? a prosecution, or can we just say to somebody in a much kinder way, more educational way? But some people aren't going to ever be swayed by education. They might need a firmer stick, harder stick.
I was going to say, pick your words carefully.
I was banned on Facebook for suggesting that somebody who beat their horse up should be beaten up. So I got a 3-day ban on Facebook for that.
Hi David, thank you for bringing such an important topic to this show. My question's around equitation science and the theory of learning. What developments would you like to see in rider understanding of equine neuroscience and learning theory to progress this topic forward?
That's a great question. I almost think there should be a basic horse ownership competency certificate before you're allowed to own a horse. And I think it should include things like basic nutrition, when to call the vet, understanding of equine behaviour. You know, we've moved a long way from when I first came to Newmarket. The classic way of teaching a horse not to rear was to get it to rear on a long line and pull it over backwards. Now, I know that still happens because, again, people have sent me videos. It doesn't happen as much, I don't think, and that's because people have understood. You know, we're now moving away from using naughty as a term with horses. Your horse is exhibiting a behaviour either because it's scared or in pain, or you've taught it to exhibit that behaviour. So, absolutely, I totally agree. Equitation science, learning theory has to be central to horse welfare.
I think you can all agree that has been totally inspiring and educational. Please put your hands together and say thank you to our guest speaker, Dr David Marlin. It's been truly amazing to have him here.